اونایی که خونشون نزدیک استادیوم آزادیه پاشن بیان استادیوم، بازی قشنگی رو میتونن تا دقیقه دیگه ببینن. فرصت برای تیم ایران، یه موقع دیگه حالا توی دروازه توپ به ثمر میرسه و نتیجه رو جهانبخش 1-0 میکنه. واکا هنوز هم خود هنری واکا صاحب توپه. این دازه برای شماره 10 و توی دروازه 10 تازه وارد. کامپوس دروازه رو باز میکنه و خوشحالی سزار فاریاس. بازی اولون با یمن در ابوظبی، 2 بازی بعدی در دبی خواهد بود. یه پاس توی در، فرصت برای ترابی توی دروازه. گل دوم رو مهدی میزنه، خوبم میزنه، خوب بیرون میاد و حالا یه فوروارد قد و قامت دار و بلند قد به بازی میره.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Gol Bezan podcast. I'm your host, Arya Alaverdi. I'm joined by my good friend Kian Hesamian. Kian, how are you doing?
I'm good, great to be here.
Good. Obviously, this is new for some of you guys who have listened to the pods before. Usual members, Sina, Pasha, Pejman, Babak, they're not here today. It'll be me and Kian who will discuss the Bolivia versus Iran match that took place on Tuesday, and we will try and analyse the match in full as much as we can. We'll take a little bit of in-depth analysis into the defence of Iran and look at sort of what we can see in the next few games that are going to come up against Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. They will take place in November. So to start with, Kian, I want to ask you a question that's we looked at the formation that we played against Uzbekistan. Against Uzbekistan we played a 4-2-3-1. In this match we played a 4-3-3. I think it was quite evident that he'd gone back to that formation that he used in the World Cup. What did you see in Iran's midfield that impressed you? In terms of obviously the first three you started were Ebrahimi, Amiri and Quddus. What did you see that was impressive, and would you want to see that continue, or do you want to go back to the 4-2-3-1 that we saw against Uzbekistan?
So what I think is, I watched all those games, and I think that actually the 4-3-3 is much better for how we're going to be trying to play in the Asian Cup. The first thing I noticed, during the whole game with this formation before they subbed out, is that the ball was moving around the pitch much more effortlessly. It looked like we had a much better distribution. It looked like Ebrahimi, Quddus, and Amiri, they were keeping it flowing. And I like that. These players, Ebrahimi and Amiri, they have a really high work rate, and I think that really factored into that the midfield was doing a great job of getting the ball all around the pitch, and it seemed like we had a lot more energy, and the passes that were coming from the midfield, especially from Quddus and also from Ebrahimi and Amiri, were much more forceful. One of the criticisms of a lot of people, including myself, who've been watching Team Melli matches, is that a lot of times it seems like our passes are either hit too hard or too soft. And with this midfield, with the 4-3-3, the midfield looked a lot more natural, and I felt like it was flowing better. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I agree. I think that we saw a good balance of creativity that we know Quddus has, and a good mix of energetic, hard-working, combative play by Amiri, which is something that's very, very key in a team like Iran, because we saw a very high-tempo, hard-working team in the World Cup with Ebrahimi and Amiri in midfield. We were lacking that creativity. Quddus came in against Bolivia in that first half, and for me, he really showed fantastic first touch, which was very, very evident from the start of the match. His first touch was on point, in my opinion, for the full 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And also his link-up play with Jahanbakhsh on the right-hand side and Moharami as well at right back, who made his first start for Iran. was really, really good to see. So I'm happy that's sort of something that we could maybe see in the next sort of friendlies, and if that continues, it could be a big threat in the Asian Cup.
Yeah, I think that was really important, and I think I saw a lot of glimpses. I think that Rodus is a very unique player, but what I did see is that he kind of brings the same presence that Tejager brings to our midfield, and kind of the presence of somebody who looks really confident when he's on the ball, obviously has good touch, has very good passing, and I feel like it helps the midfield flow when you know that you have a guy in the midfield that can get those forward passes and direct passes and doesn't have any difficulty doing so. I do think that he has a very different side to his game than Tejager, but I think that compared to the other players that we have up front, like Jahanbakhsh and Osmoon, who at times they can look a little bit rushed, and they play kind of holholi, I think that Rodus is a good person to have there to kind of like keep the game calm and keep the ball.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good mix of creativity that we need, that we've missed when Tejager left the national team through injury, and times that we didn't have him in the qualifiers. I think we really missed that kind of player. I think Rodus now coming in is a player who will give us that extra little key to open up defences and a guy who can take free kicks, can take corners. We need that in a team. Every team needs a player like that, and I think Iran has missed that for a long time. Now that he's come in, I think it's a big improvement for our midfield. Also, one thing I want to add is the amount of defensive work rate that he added in as well. I mean, he was really making tackles, interceptions, and he was working for the team, which is great to see.
I was surprised to see that. That was something I hadn't seen from him before. And that was good because I think that's something that he's going to have to keep up if he's going to have to play in this position under Carlos.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we'll move on slightly. I will come back to the midfield in a minute. We'll move on to the front three who started off. We had Jahanbakhsh on the right wing, Taremi on the left wing, and we had Sadr Osmoon back from his temporary retirement that he announced after the World Cup that he was going to retire, but he's come back to the national team. We're happy to have him back, and he made his start against Bolivia. Didn't score a goal, which we were hoping that he would, but it happens. He had some chances. Jahanbakhsh got a goal. He scored. What did you think of Jahanbakhsh's performance? Even though he got the goal, what did you think that he offered the team? Did you feel like he was applying himself the right way, or did you feel he was disappointing to watch?
I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship, and by hate I mean I think that he has a lot more potential than what he shows sometimes for Team Melli. What I did like about this game was it has to do with the goal, obviously. I watched the majority of Jahanbakhsh's games at AZ, and I think that Jahanbakhsh is actually more dangerous in the box than he or maybe even Carlos gives him credit for. He scored lots of headers and he scored lots of goals in the box for AZ, and I think that we saw, he got himself in there and he got himself a goal off a rebound. It doesn't have to be pretty as long as you score it, and he's good in the box. I think that it's good if we let him, we see him drift in there more during the game when we have possession near the box. But I do think that at times what disappointed me was he would have a good position to go forward. He would be driving the ball forward, but at times I feel like his decision making is too rushed and that he just ends up running into the defenders, or he just picks his pass completely wrong. And I feel like there's some level of stress or nerves that he has when he's playing like that, because we've seen what he does for AZ. He uses splitting passes. He has pinpoint accuracy when he plays for them, but for some reason I feel that he puts too much pressure on himself. I think that's the reason that sometimes we see him perform less than what we expect.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. Like he does maybe do too much, and that maybe can be a downfall to his games for the national team. But I think it's not a bad thing that he's trying hard. But one of the things that we want to see from a winger, especially from a winger, is that you want them to be a bit more ambitious. You want them to be a bit more, the guy who will take the ball and make something happen out of nothing, and I think Jahanbakhsh, his role in the national team, and Carlos Queiroz has very clearly defined this, even in the World Cup, is that he has to work hard. He has to help the fullback, whoever it is, if it's Reza Yon, it's Moharami, Ghafouri, whoever is playing on the right hand side with him, he has to come back and help. And that could limit a winger, but he has to be more ambitious. And I think that we want to see, for me, I want to see him be like, for example, I don't want to compare him to any players, but a player like Neymar for Brazil, for example, he will take the ball all the time and demand it and try and attack. I'm not saying he should be like Neymar, but I think he should be more ambitious in the fact that he should take the ball more, bring it into his feet, ask for it, and take on the fullback. Something that I don't really see him doing much, even for Brighton. We don't see it. And I think that's maybe just the issue of, could be an issue of instruction, the coach telling him not to do that too much, be more safe. That's okay. But I would like to see him be a bit more taking the initiative and trying to attack, which is something that we'll see hopefully in the Asian Cup with teams like Yemen and those weaker teams. I think he can show that, and I think he could grow confidence from that in the Asian Cup.
I agree. I think that all of us would just like to see a little bit more aggression in his game as a winger. Aggression as in, like you said, like asking for the ball. And what I also would like to see is, we all know that Jahanbakhsh is good at scoring goals. He scored a lot of goals for AZ, and a lot of them were from around the box. And I'd like to see him take those shots sometimes. He doesn't have to score them, but I feel like he doesn't even try to get in those same positions sometimes. And I think that if he's playing on the right, he likes to cut in. If somebody gives him a ball on the right side of the box, I think that sometimes he should go for it. And I think that the way that Team Melli plays could benefit even from just like some ricochets or a bad block by the goalie. I think that we're a team that scores goals off events like that. I think that's something that we're strong at, so he should definitely try those.
Yeah, I want to quickly talk a little bit about Taremi. Obviously, he assisted Jahanbakhsh for his goal, which he did score, so we can give him that as a praise that he scored a goal. But Taremi, I feel like Taremi had a performance that was good in terms of what he could have had. He could have had 2 goals. He did have an assist, but other than that, it wasn't as if he was playing for, as if he hadn't played football for a long time. He wasn't, in my opinion, in good connect. He wasn't in connection with his teammates. He wasn't linking up with the teammates the way he should do. That he's played with a team like this. He played with Osmo, and he's played with Jahanbakhsh for so many years now. In the qualifiers, you should see that. You should see him, linking up, but we don't. It's a bit of a shame. But I feel like he could always do more. What do you think?
I noticed the same thing, and I think that Taremi, I actually think that his combination play is actually one of his most valuable assets, and I was kind of surprised to see that it wasn't there. What's disappointing to me is that I think that playing in the league that he plays has made him a little bit complacent as far as like finishing goes too. I didn't think his link up was as good as it usually is, which is what I think his real value was for us, especially in the World Cup. And I think that he needs to just, I don't know, I think that playing in that league has made him has made him not so sharp as he always is. And he's a little bit too wasteful, I think, for higher profile matches. He puts himself in really good positions, and he's always in a dangerous area, which makes it even more disappointing. I'd like to see him be a little bit more sharp. I don't know if maybe it's just he's starting the season and he's not so fit yet. And I'd like to see him try to work on that and work on how clinical he is as a left winger or a forward or a striker.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've spoken about the strikers. We've spoken about Osmo, and he's come back to from the retirement, and he's had a bit of not a bad game. He had some good hold up play. He was able to link up sometimes. Unfortunately, I don't think the ball was fed to him as much as it should be. But he had an okay game, and I think that he will improve. I think he's still young. He's only 23 years old. He will still improve, and I think there's more from him to come, especially in the Asian Cup, where I think he shone last time, and he can definitely shine this year round. Keon, I want to speak to you a little bit about the defence now, because I think the defence is something that we have always sort of, in the last 4 or 5 years, looked at as Carlos Queiroz's probably strongest aspect of the national team really. And I think that over the years we've had players like Jalal Hosseini and Pejman Montazeri, Amir Hossein Sadeghi, players who are very well, you could say, cultured and experienced within Iranian football and you know, or even Qatari football, as they went and played in Qatar for a few years, but not so experienced in European football. So now we have players like Purali Ganji and Majid Hosseini who have gone to Europe and done great things so far, and they've played about 5-6 games each of them, and they've done very well. What have you seen? Because we obviously in the defence we played Moharami, Cheshmi, Hosseini, and Mohammadi as a back four. What did you? Sorry, not Mohammadi. Housafi as a left back. What did you see there in that team that impressed you, and what were the negatives? Because first of all, we had 2 players playing in Europe, Hosseini and Moharami, and 2 players who are capable of playing in Europe, Housafi and Cheshmi, but are playing in Iran. And those were the 2 that weren't really impressive, but the other 2 played really well. What did you see in that?
You know, like I said, I play defense myself, and we always talk about this. I think that you can definitely see the difference in the quality of their play, their decision making, and their fitness. I've watched, for example, the majority of Majid Hosseini's games and some of Moharami's games, and I think that Moharami did really well. I was actually impressed by him. I think that he offers a lot of movement, and I think he offers a lot to Team Melli in terms of coverage. He covers a lot of ground. He has a lot of pace. And I think he's the type of right back that modern coaches like. I think that if he can work a little bit more on his defensive positioning, I know that he's gotten ripped about that in his team in Croatia, and also a little bit when he played for Persepolis. And I think that that's something that Carlos can work on with him, and our other defenders and, you know, the rest of the team can work on with him. But I think he brings a lot of movement. Hosseini, I've watched all his games in Trabzonspor, and the Turkish league is just a much more high pressure and high paced environment, and he's constantly asking for the ball, and he's constantly asked to distribute and move with the ball. And I think that he's improved a ridiculous amount only having played 6 games. I think that he's already a markedly improved player. I almost think that Cheshmi has regressed, and Housafi, I'm not so decided on how I feel about it yet, because I think that he is good on the ball for a left back and brings the ball forward better than Mohammadi, but I think defensively he can be very suspect.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think Mohammadi, really deserves to start at left back from now on. I think Housafi is a good player, but I don't know. As a left back, he is very, as you said, he's very suspect, and he seems to have. Listen, Housafi is a great footballer. First of all, first and foremost, he's a fantastic football player. He's got great passing ability, great dribbling, control. He has all the fundamentals to be a great football player. But the only time I've seen him play well, for the national team especially, was in midfield. And I think that's where he should be playing. Because that's where Queiroz got the best out of him. Alongside Zatullahi at some period when he was playing 4-2-3-1. But at left back, he isn't the same player, unfortunately. But you were speaking about my favourite player at the moment, Majid Hosseini, and well, I mean, I say that, but I think Keelan, I think you've had a little bit of a fanboy moment with him a couple of times over the course of this season.
I made a few memes of his takedowns for Trabzonspor.
Yeah, so let's go and focus on him a little bit. What do you think of Majid Hosseini's sort of growth? I mean, in terms of, obviously he's gone to Turkey. He's played about, I think it's 5 or 6 games. He played against Galatasaray, won that game, was like 5-0, 4-0. And he's just, whenever he's played, his team have almost either won or drawn. They've not conceded many goals with him in the team. When he's played for Iran, they've not conceded many goals. They've always done well. You know, whenever they played with Hosseini, in my opinion, they've done well. And what have you seen in him as a replacement for Jalal Hosseini first and foremost, because he's not playing anymore, and second of all, playing with a player like Cheshmi, who had a horrible game against Bolivia. Let's be honest, he had a horrible game. What did you see in his leadership qualities and in his just general composure? What have you seen in him?
I think that as good as I think Sayed Jalal Hosseini was in his over 100 caps for Team Melli, I think that Majid Hosseini is a completely different type of center back, and I'm going to explain why I think so. Jalal Hosseini comes from the generation of Iranian center backs that focused a lot on brute defending, and we all know that they're not the best in playmaking and bringing the ball out from the back. I don't think that they're very good at passing, and I think that under pressure, players from Jalal Hosseini's generation, not including Montazeri, but players like Salehi and Hosseini would just resort to booting it up the field, and that was infuriating. Majid seems like a player who has cold blood, and as a center back, I think that having that cold blood as a player who's only 23 years old, who was thrown into two teams that were playing in very serious matches, and one playing at the World Cup, just tossed in there versus Spain and Portugal, which I would say are insanely high pressure matches. He performed amazing.
I want to add, actually, he was 21.
21.
He was 22 on the day of the Spain match.
Even more impressive. I think for his age, I don't think we've ever seen an Iranian center back that plays like a mature and seasoned center back. He doesn't play like a center back who's 22. We all know that even in European football, center backs typically don't start starting for their teams at such young ages. They really have to be something. The only very young center back that I've seen get the starting spot for his team was probably like Rafael Varane. I don't really see lots of center backs under 24 or 25 getting full playing time, and he's proved for Team Melli and Trabzon that he has very good ball control. He's very good at getting the ball forward, like not side-to-side passes, moving forward with the ball, making direct passes. And he's very good at covering for bad center backs. He does it for Zargo Toure and Trabzonspor, and he did it when Cheshmi messed up too, although Cheshmi did get in his way on the goal that Bolivia almost scored towards the end. I feel like Cheshmi almost stopped Hosseini from saving him a few times by just like getting in the way. I don't really know what he was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a few instances where you saw Hosseini literally have to come out of his position in the left centre back position and go over to left back and help Haisafi, or come over to right centre back and help Cheshmi. I think that you don't want to see that. You don't want to see him do that, because against bigger teams, that's going to be so costly. He might be good enough to get a ball and recover, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes naturally fatigue will come in and you can't come in and recover. And against bigger teams, that is a big issue. And I think Rouzbeh Cheshmi is a player who I have watched quite a lot, I would say, for Istiqlal, and obviously I've watched all his Team Melli matches, and I think that he's got the ability to be a good player. He's got the ability to be, he has the height, first of all. A guy who is fantastic in the air. He can head the ball. He scored against Uzbekistan, I think it was in May. He has the ability, but as a centre back, it worries me, because it seems like he's too square. You can't be square. As a centre back, you cannot be square. Even somebody like Jalal Hosseini, who carried a lot of weight, even though maybe he was about 6'2", 6'1" tall, he carried a lot of weight, but he was able to be mobile and side on, and always on the move, on the ball with his feet, making sure he could recover. Cheshmi seems like he's just going to stand still and do nothing half the time, and I think that's a poor fundamental skill not to have at his age. Where you're expecting him to grow into a good player. He's nearly 25 years old. The only thing I've seen him play well is in defensive midfield, and unfortunately we already have Izzatullahi and Ibrahimi, and I think probably Karimi would be ahead of him in that position, so I don't see him playing there. If he continues to be that kind of player who's not going to work hard as a centre back, maybe you shouldn't be playing for the national team. I think it's tough to say that, but it's a national team of the country. Do you know what I mean? They have to pick the best players.
Absolutely.
And if he's not playing well, you can't pick him. So I hope Queiroz sees that. Of course, first of all, he might have to play him because who else do we have? We have Mohamed Reza Khanzadeh, who you don't want to play. You don't want to play Khanzadeh because he's not good. I'm not gonna be. Yeah, absolutely. He's a downgrade. There's no need for that. And Pejman Montazeri is a good player. I think you spoke about him being a good passer of the ball, but he is 34 years old. And when we finish the Asian Cup, I want to make this really clear about Jalal Hosseini and Montazeri. When we finish the Asian Cup, those players will most likely have to retire. The reason why I say that is because there's nothing else for them to do. The World Cup will be in 3 years' time, and Jalal Hosseini will be nearly 40 years old. He won't make it. There's no point in him being in the team anymore because he's not going to make the World Cup. There's no point in that. So if he goes to the Asian Cup, okay, he plays well, yeah, but he won't be able to then progress on that aspect of his career. He can't progress on it anymore because he has to retire. Naturally, he will have to retire. So we have to bring in young players. Unfortunately, we don't have any young centre backs. You have Khanzadeh, but he's not that great. There's a few other players in the league. Iman Salimi, who's not really playing for Tiraktos that much. You have some other players, Nejad Mehdi, who plays for Soban, and a few other players, but they are at that level. I think it's a shame. We got lucky with Hosseini coming in, Majid Hosseini, but we have to look at some new talents. So wrapping up, Keon, I want to speak to you quickly about the next two matches and what we'll quickly. In fact, we'll go on a little bit of a coaching tour of what you want to see in the starting lineup against Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago. So against Trinidad and Tobago, give me that sort of analysis. What do you think of that match against Venezuela?
So Trinidad and Tobago, obviously it's not going to be as strong as an opponent as Venezuela. I think Trinidad and Tobago is going to be preparing us for those group stage matches. And I think that Carlos might go with a different approach in that match. I think maybe he'll switch up the midfield. Maybe he'll put Haj Sefi back in the midfield with Ezat Tolai. I'm not sure because that formation also worked very well. We can all remember the game against Algeria, and I think there was other games that they played together. So I would also like to see maybe somebody else start on the left wing instead of Taremi. Maybe they can bring something else for the team. I thought that Torabi was really interesting, and I think he did great. As much as I'd like him to move to Europe, I think his impact was very evident when he came in, and he brings a lot of energy to that, and I think that he's a little bit more aggressive and direct in how he goes forward. So we can try him against Trinidad. Maybe we can see if he can get a couple of goals, and maybe he would be a good option to play against these smaller teams, because I think that he's somebody who can cause a lot of danger for these teams with the way he plays. As for forwards, we could try out Rezai because we need to see who's going to be our backup center forward if we don't have Osmoon, if he gets injured, even though his fitness has been much better this season. And we should also test out Golizada and see if he can bring something different than Jahan Bakhsh. I know Jahan Bakhsh plays is probably considered our best legionnaire, but I don't think that anybody's spot should be guaranteed in Team Melli. So I think that we should look for some changes. And for Venezuela, I would go for a more solid team in the midfield, similar to what we played against Bolivia. Venezuela, we played them, and I think that Venezuela is a really good team. They put us under a lot of pressure last time we played, and Jahan Bakhsh also scored in that game. So I think that we'll play maybe a stronger lineup against Venezuela, something that we'll be saving, to replicate maybe games against better Asian opponents. So it'll be interesting to see what Carlos tries out, but I think that we won't be able to predict any lineups just like the World Cup. I think he's going to surprise us.
So Keon, in a perfect world, what would your back four be?
Perfect world back four would be Mohammadi, Majid Hosseini, Mortaza Puradiganji, and Sadegh Moharami.
Okay, so go on to your midfield and forwards.
For the midfield, I would like to see Amiri, Ezatolai, and Rodus. For the forwards, I would say it's going to be hard. I would say Jahan Bakhsh, Osmoon, and either Taremi or maybe we can put Rezai there, but I haven't seen him there. But I think he's more clinical than Taremi, and I would like to try him out.
Brilliant. I think we'll stick with Beiraman in goals as well.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's contested at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we were in the last podcast. We were speaking about, we were debating about Obed Zardeh starting ahead of Bayern. I don't see it. I'm sorry, but I love Obed Zardeh as a person, as a player, but I don't see him playing ahead of Bayern.
No, absolutely not. They're not in the same. They're not in the same league at this point. Maybe he has room to grow, but as far as being a solid goalkeeper, he has a long way to go before he's Bayern Van.
Absolutely. Okay, Keon, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Guys,
Absolutely.
Make sure you follow us on Twitter. The handle would be @Gol Bezan. We will post this podcast. Of course, it will be live on. It'll be on SoundCloud, iTunes. Make sure you give us a rating, and also, hopefully, we will have a podcast with Dan Gaspar coming out as soon as possible. Maybe coming out in the same sort of period as this, so enjoy that. Make sure you check it out. We'll get you that as soon as possible, and thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.